Walk into almost any electronics store, and you can buy an inkjet printer for about $70. It feels like a typo. You are buying a machine packed with precision stepper motors, optical sensors, wireless networking, and a microscopic print head system. According to a teardown analysis by IHS Markit, the physical materials inside a typical $70 printer actually cost around $120 to manufacture, and that is before boxing it up and shipping it across an ocean. The price tag on the shelf is a deliberate illusion. The manufacturer is heavily subsidizing the hardware because the upfront retail price is entirely disconnected from what you will ultimately pay to keep the machine running. Absorbing a financial loss on the physical box is a strategic requirement to get the printer onto your desk. Because once that machine sits in your home office, it creates an installed base, a captive audience forced to return to the original manufacturer every time a cartridge runs dry. Ink is consumed slowly. By the time you need a refill, the psychological sting of buying the printer has faded. You are no longer comparing hardware prices on a shelf. You are comparing replacement cartridges that fit the exact machine you already own. This chart shows the per milliliter cost of standard printer ink compared to other expensive fluids. The UK consumer group Which calculated that replacing a standard inkjet cartridge can cost over 7 times more per milliliter than a bottle of vintage champagne. You aren't paying for bulk chemical fluid. You are paying for the exact plastic grooves and contacts engineered to communicate with your specific printer carriage. It is a classic razor and blades model. The initial loss on the printer builds the relationship, but the repeated sale of highly engineered, compatible ink actually monetizes it. To understand how lucrative this loop is, we have to look at the balance sheets of the companies that perfected it. This is a breakdown of HP's printing revenue for fiscal 2025. Out of nearly $16.7 billion in total revenue, roughly $10.9 billion came entirely from supplies. 2/3 of their entire printing business is driven by consumables, not the machines themselves. HP CEO Enrique Lores stated the strategy clearly at Davos, noting, "We lose money on the hardware, we make money on the supplies." This physical machine functions as a Trojan horse, placed on the desk to harvest years of recurring supply demand. This massive revenue stream faces one constant threat: a consumer finding a cheaper third-party cartridge that fits perfectly into their machine. To defend their margins, manufacturers turn to digital enforcement. The physical cartridge is embedded with a microchip, acting as a gatekeeper to verify whether the ink is authorized to flow. HP openly utilizes a system called dynamic security. The company states these measures are necessary to protect their intellectual property, maintain the integrity of the printing system, and ensure a consistent customer experience. But the enforcement is active. The company pushes periodic automatic firmware updates directly to devices sitting in people's homes. A third-party cartridge that printed perfectly on a Tuesday can be blocked entirely by Wednesday morning because an overnight update instructed the printer to reject its chip. There is a path for remanufacturers, but it requires operating within the ecosystem. Third-party vendors can refill and sell HP cartridges, provided they reset genuine OEM chips through authorized cloud-based programs like Secure Reuse. The cartridge has transitioned into an authenticated node on a closed corporate network, turning simple ink storage into a digital rights management issue. Manufacturers haven't always relied solely on firmware to enforce these rules. For years, the industry fought this battle in the courtroom, peaking when Lexmark used its patent rights to try and stop third-party companies from refilling its empty toner cartridges. The fight went all the way to the top. In 2017, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled against Lexmark, establishing a clear boundary based on patent exhaustion. Once a manufacturer sells a specific physical item, their patent rights over that item are exhausted. The ruling meant companies could no longer use patent infringement lawsuits to control what happened to a physical cartridge after it was legally purchased, emptied, and refilled by someone else. Because the law placed a hard limit on controlling the physical hardware through the courts, the industry had to pivot. Protecting those lucrative supply margins now relies on continuous digital lock-in through the printer software. Consumer frustration with constant chip updates and expensive cartridges eventually created a market opening for a completely different design: tank printers. This hardware flips the entire economic model upside down. You pay a much higher retail price up front for the physical machine, but you refill it using massive, cheap bottles of bulk liquid. A purchase in the electronics aisle now involves weighing two opposing financial architectures: low entry costs against long-term refill savings. The printer industry illustrates a broader economic blueprint. By placing an initial device in a home or office, a company creates an installed base that can generate a decade of demand for its specific consumables. But the model carries an inherent risk. If the recurring financial pain becomes too high, competitors will simply engineer new physical architectures to bypass the digital lock-in completely. A company's ultimate objective is the absolute control of the post-sale relationship, far beyond the physical machine it left on the desk.